Hi guys, it's Doesn't Matter, and
I'm the Dream.
this is episode 17 of our podcast, Confessions of a Stan Mixer Edition. Today we are going to be talking about what questions we would want to ask the girls in like our dream interview. I would want to ask them like what's the full process of preparing a live acoustic? So like how do they decide arrangements, harmonies, what's the rehearsals like? Like how often do they have to rehearse? Like how long does it take to prepare? Or do they arrange it themselves? Is there a vocal coach helping them? How do they decide how much they want to stick to the studio version? Like for instance, the touch and shout to max acoustics are very different than the live acoustic, so like how does that get decided? So that type of stuff.
My first question is, if you could go back and redo any album, which one would you choose and why? Um, I want to know that because they've said a few times which songs they would want to go back and release as singles, but they never actually talked about any of the albums in that way. And so I'm curious to see which ones, like if they were all to keep their success, maybe, or even if that were to change too, which ones would they want to go back and redo now that they're a little bit more experienced in songwriting? um, and just why, like what the reasoning is, if they would keep any of the songs, if they would change up the style. It's just something I've always been curious to know.
All right, my next one is how do you choose singles? So obviously the label has input and stuff like that. So I just kind of would want not like tea like shadiness, but just like how much say do you have in the choice of singles? How much choice do you have to say in like how many singles get chosen? When are they decided? Um, that type of stuff.
Yeah, I have a one that's similar to that, but it's a little different. Mine's just, how do you decide on songs to put on an album? um so like, I want to know if it's maybe like a certain majority, like if it's has to be all of them, three-fourths, or if it's just split, what do they do? um yeah, pretty much just how they figure out which songs they want to use and which ones they end up sending off. That's just kind of my little thing I've always wondered that they've never directly answered.
My next one is how does the actual recording process work in the sense of harmonies and choruses? So, like, sometimes we've seen them that they all go in the booth together to do like choruses or harmonies. So, like, they did hair all together. They went into the studio like all to stand there together around a mic to do like the bounce back harmonies behind Jesse. So, I like kind of just wonder like how does that get decided? Like is it them? Is it a producer? Is it because they want a certain sound? Why would you then choose to do it separate on like a different song? So I just kind of want to hear like the logic behind that.
Mine's a slight follow up to my previous question, and it's, what do you do if one of you really like dislikes the song? Do you still release it? Do you change it? Like, see what part is bothering them and maybe fix that part. Um, just what happens, because we know that there's songs that they've said that they are not fans of. So I want to know how that came about. Like, maybe did two override the other ones? Did they kind of just go along with it?
Did the
Um,
label get involved?
yeah, did the label get involved? I'm just really curious to know that, because obviously, like, there's going to be times where they don't all agree. So I want to know what happens when that does happen.
Well, I think label gets final say because Jessica got screwed with Black Magic.
Oh, true. Yeah, I didn't think about that.
But I think they probably had more of a say. And I'm sorry, I'm playing with my necklace so much today. You guys can probably hear it. Um, uh, I feel like, but like Glory Days and LM5 and Confetti, they probably had more say in the track in the singles, as far as the label goes.
Mhm.
Um, all right, and then I also want to know as far as like I'm trying to decide which order I'm gonna say this in. It doesn't really matter. Um, so, like, how do you decide the chorus arrangement? So, like, we know from line distributions that, like, sometimes it's 1 girl, sometimes it's 2, sometimes it's 3, sometimes it's 4, sometimes, like, it's, different variations depending on, like, which chorus it is in the song. Sometimes it's, like, in and out. So just, like, how do you decide who's singing the chorus and in what way and who's doing which harmonies and how many girls are singing on it and all of that stuff. I just wonder is it a producer decision? Is it the girls? Do they record it a bunch of different ways and then it gets decided later and they don't even know who's actually doing the chorus? Um, so I'm interested in that.
My next one is what would a normal week in the life look for a Little Mix member? Um, just kind of like how much rehearsal time do they have to do? How much studio time? Because we know that it's a lot, and we know that sometimes they have more time than others. So, kind of just what the usual, I guess, in loose quotations, because I know like every week is probably different. Um, what I guess maybe change normal week to maybe normal preparation for a show would look like. Um, just because I've always been really curious to see what that is and how much time they have to spend in each different section choreographing, or not really choreographing, but like rehearsing, uh, recording, everything really. So yeah.
I also kind of like similar to that. Like I I am interested in like because okay, so like for tour and stuff, right? How do they like vocally prep for tour? And not like vocal exercises, but like they obviously have to memorize and practice, I would assume, their individual parts on tour. Obviously the harmonies too, but a lot of the harmonies aren't live on tour. So I assume that like that's a little more um, not quite as difficult because there's not as many of them. But I want to know, like, do they spend time on their own going over it? Do they just like listen to the studio version and sing along with it? Like, I mean, obviously they know their own songs, but even though you know your own songs, that doesn't mean that like you know it well enough to then go perform it live, for 2, 3, 4 months. And then also, like, they also do a lot of note changes. So, like, do you have to practice the note changes? Like, if you know that, like, whatever you did in studio isn't realistic. So I'm really curious about, like, how the individual vocal prep is for tour.
I'm like saying these all out of order right now, but it's
Same.
fine. um, oh, where's what I was just gonna ask? Okay, there it is. Is there a country that they hate or dislike performing in? Because I feel like they all probably have one that they favor over the other and one that they just don't like as much. Um, and obviously, it's something that they would never say. But I'm really curious to know like what it would be and why. Um, like maybe is it they're a quieter crowd? Is it that they're too wild? Like I don't know. Um, just always thought about that because like as a dancer, you know that there's certain venues that you prefer to perform at rather than others.
Yeah.
So I've always been curious in that one.
It's kind of similar to what I was saying last time. I want to obviously they would never reveal this, kind of like your your last question where they'd never say it. They'd never like answer this, but this is my dream interview, so I get to ask it. Um, I want to know how they decide what they're going to lip sync on tour.
Yeah.
Like, not in a judgy way, but, like, sometimes the things they lip make no sense. Like, okay, like, Perry lipping a G5 and Lee lipping an F5 and Jade lipping her D5s in Power and her F5 and Told You So, like, obviously that makes sense, right? Those high notes trying to hit them every night would be really harsh on their voice. But, like, Jesse lipping Bounce Back and Jade lipping Think About Us and Perry lipping the B4 in Reggaeton Lento. Like those vocals should be things they're more than capable of doing. So like why are they not doing them? Or like Jesse chose to lip sync like Salute and Power for Fusion and Big Weekend, but then she did them live on tour the entire time. So like why? That just like doesn't really make sense to me. And like what made Perry decide to like take out most of her lipped parts after she got sick? Like what was the logic behind that? She obviously planned to lip them for tour and then she got sick and she was just like, "Eh." Like so yeah, I would love to kind of know the logic behind that. Or like, like why is Jessie lipping the first part of her verse in Down and Dirty, but then she goes live? Like if you're gonna lip it, why don't you just lip the whole thing? Or if you're gonna sing half of it live, why isn't the whole thing live? Like what's the logic behind that? Like why was that decision made? And like why did Jade lip like so much of her stuff after she recovered from being sick on the LM5 tour? Like, why did it last so long? And like, why did she go? Why did she start doing "Think About Us" live at the end of the tour? But then when they went to Brazil, it was lipped again. Like, I want to know the logic behind that. Like, I really do. And I'm intentionally not mentioning some for Lee guys, not because she doesn't have any, but because I haven't done well actually I don't know if I'll have released it by the time this comes out, but at the time of recording this, I have not finished Leanne's lip syncing game. And so I don't want to mess up my own game by talking about it right now. And actually, the one I did mention for her, I'm probably going to edit out. Uh, so yeah, so guys, she has things that she lip syncs, but I'm intentionally not mentioning them because I want you guys to play my game. But yeah, I'm really curious about how that gets decided. Because I just think that sometimes the choices are really interesting, and I don't like get the logic behind them. So I'd love for an explanation. Obviously, we'll never get one, but I'm still curious.
Yeah. This question is kind of similar to my first question, and it's what would you do differently with each era, but make it realistic, not as in like, oh, I wish we would have won this award, or I wish we would have had an opportunity to perform here. I mean, like, as in, would you have switched up the promo, seeing how successful whatever era they choose? Like, if they were to choose Glory Days, would they push it a little bit more? Would they go different places? Would they maybe change the set list for certain performances? Um, so that's another thing that I'm kind of curious to know if they would ever redo an era, like going back, seeing how it played out, and if they would keep the decisions that they made, with like all their promo performances, all that stuff the same, or if they would maybe change it. And after seeing their impact or their reach in other countries, maybe try to promo there or perform different songs that probably could go further after seeing the success with the album. I don't know, just curious.
All right, next part, to go back to the recording element of things. Um, like what parts of the songs do they all record? So obviously they've said in the past that like there are certain parts where they just know this girl will sing it or this girl will sing it. But for instance, we know that for Sweet Melody, all of the girls sang the do do do, and then Jesse's was picked as like being the one that like cut through the most. So I wonder like which parts of songs do they not know which girl should do, and then they all try it out and then it gets picked, and then like why did it get picked and all of that. I think that would be interesting.
My next question is if they could do any more YouTube series, what would they want to do? Um, Even if they were to start their own like YouTube channel, kind of like as in why haven't they yet? Because I know they've said before they would love to do a TV show, just to keep up with their lives, and I feel like YouTube would actually be a really good way to do something similar because everybody wants it, they want to do it. So I'm kind of curious as to like why it hasn't happened. Um, And then going back to like the original question, if they were to do another series, what would they want to do? Would they want to do more of like the fun type of games? Because we know that they like games. Would they want to do more promo-y type videos that they've done in the past? Or just behind the scene vlogs type of content that they really want to
Mixer
focus on?
Mondays.
Yeah, Mixer Mondays.
I
Um,
miss Mixer Mondays.
Same. Yeah, because I haven't done one since the whole bounce back release. So I'm curious to know if they were to do it again, what would they want to do? Because I have some great ideas that they should do. But that's a topic for a different day.
Um, all right, my next one is back to the recording studio. Is how do you record and decide on ad lib? So, like, do the girls just like do a run through of the song and just do whatever they want? Does the producer have specific ideas for ad libs that they want the girls to do and they know which girl they want to do it? And then, how do you like what's the final decision? Like, how do you decide which ad libs get chosen and which ones go in and just like all that type of stuff. Like, how exactly does the ad lib process work?
Um, so my last question is, when they write a song, do they write more than one, I guess, draft for each verse? Um, because like in TV shows, like for scripts, you write alternate endings, you write multiple different scenes just in case something doesn't work. So I'm curious to know how that goes with songwriting because I've never done that before. So just curious in case someone doesn't like one of the verses or they're just unsure of what they want to do. Like when it's like for example, when I guess I'll use Jade for example. When Jade wrote Wasabi, did she have multiple drafts and was like, here, which one do you like the most? Or was it one solid song? That's kind of what I'm curious to know.
Hmm.
In cases like that, when that does happen, is it exactly how it was, or are there multiple different like outcomes, I guess?
Yeah. My last one is for dance rehearsals. Like, what do the dance rehearsals look like? How much say do they have in the choreography? Um, like, is it a month of just like every single day you're in the studio for like a dance studio, like working on the choreography and practicing, or is it more spread out? Is it not full days? Um, just that type of stuff. Cause I know that like when I used to dance, we used to have full days of rehearsals. So like, is that what they do, or do they not have like that time to dedicate to it? And when they're prepping for tour, they have to do vocals and harmonies and so maybe like they can't do entire days of dance rehearsals. So just like what does that look like and how does the dance choreography get chosen? Even like the really simple stuff like how is it chosen like their formations on stage? Like how do you decide what order they're going to be in and how they get there and why? Because I notice a lot that on tours the girls tend to have like a side that they're primarily on um and it's not coming to me like right now an example, but like I've definitely noticed that like if you pick a tour there's usually like the same girl who kind of ends up, not just like one girl, but like the girls tend to end up on the same side of the stage a lot. um and so I just wonder like is that intentional, is that just like a coincidence, just like that type of stuff. Okay, so we wanted to do this because the girls just like don't get asked relevant things
Yeah.
when they're in interviews. Even like a lot of times it's like boyfriends and makeup and flirting um and like diet and exercise and like vague questions about like what's tour like, or accents, or just like really general or like irrelevant questions that are just kind of really annoying and they get asked them like over and over and over again. And I wish they would get asked, I think we wish they would get asked like more relevant in-depth questions. And
Hmm.
then I also wish that they would just be more persistent with the questioning. Like even when good questions get asked, sometimes the girls will dodge it or just get distracted and kind of go off topic. And instead of like the interviewer kind of pushing it again or asking a follow up question, they'll just kind of let it go and then you don't really get an answer. Um, and so I wish that they just had better interviews, to be honest, more relevant, more personalized, more in depth. interviews, and they really just don't. And it is unfortunate.
Yeah, it's always sad because I'll always see, like, for example, Capital or just one of the other common interviewers, and they'll be like, okay, mixers, comment down questions you want to know.
Yeah. Also, we don't ask good questions, guys. I'm disappointed.
Yeah, and then I'll see the good questions in there. I'll see everybody being like, okay, guys, we need to answer like good questions. Like, these are the ones we need to aim for because we want to know these questions. And they'll be good questions, but the interviewers always tend to choose the really common ones or the ones that they know will get headlines, which is really annoying.
Yeah, and then but like even like in some situations where like it's like, oh, it's like at a radio station and they put all the fan questions into a bowl and the girls are like picking, and it's like, who's your like what's your favorite Disney princess? And like
Hmm.
and it's like, or like, how's Hatchie? Or like, I don't know. And it's just kind of like, guys, come on, we can do better than that. Like, what's your favorite hairstyle like that you've ever had? Like, it's just like there are people who ask good ones, but like they never get chosen. And like they're always kind of outweighed by the like not relevant ones.
Yeah,
Um that said though, like I've also seen the girls like cop out of the harder ones.
yeah,
um like when Perry did her Q&A, I am absolutely positive there were more complex questions on her Insta live that she could have. I don't know, it wasn't an Insta live, but she was like taking questions not that long ago. It was like a few months ago. um I'm 100% sure that there were more like complex questions she could have answered, but she chose like, where's Hatchie, like how's Alex.
yeah. That's one thing I really appreciate about like Glamour is that even though like those aren't necessarily related to like the music industry and what recording is like, which is like primarily the questions that we want to know, um, they ask very well thought out and in depth questions. So I'm always excited to see when they're being interviewed by them.
Yeah, I had like a good impression of Glamour up until Jesse's interview with them.
Oh, really?
Yeah, because if you look at it, they like copy and pasted her entire interview together.
Uh,
Like she barely says a full sentence. Like it's very much like cut and pasted together.
mm,
And it kind of puts doubt on the integrity of the interview. I mean, Jesse has seemed to support the interview and hasn't like complained about it. So I don't know if maybe she like couldn't, or
mm,
she thought that however they did it kept the integrity of what she said, and so she wasn't upset with it. But it is heavily edited.
mm.
Leigh and Perry's weren't, so I was really surprised by it, and it kind of made me think maybe that like they picked the most headline worthy things Jesse said and made sure those were included,
Yeah, maybe.
because some of the things that are cut and pasted have to do with like her starving herself, have to do with just like the topics you could exploit.
Hmm.
I mean, obviously, like the things she was talking about were very serious and headline worthy to begin with, but it just felt like they really tried to maximize the interview by taking like the most bold statements she said and trying to make sure that like that's what made it in, rather than what she actually said for every question. And maybe it was just that like her interview was longer and so it was harder to put together, or I don't know, but I don't really like when things are cut together like that.
Mm.
But generally speaking, I did appreciate the interviews they did with Lee and Perry, especially Perry. I thought they did really well with her. She really,
Yeah,
I felt like opened up and really like there were a lot of small details she shared that I felt like really made her interview very good
yeah.
and very like honest and impactful. And because Lee's was also like part of a promo thing for was it Umbro?
I think so.
If I said that wrong, I'm sorry guys. And because I think it was also a promo thing, like because she had to plug that a bit, I think maybe hers wasn't quite as in depth as it could have been, but obviously she talked about a lot of really important things, and that was kind of the first time she tried to speak about them. So obviously that one was also very well done, but I think because it had kind of a dual purpose, it just wasn't. as I don't really know how to describe it, but you know, maybe you guys also noticed the difference between Perry and Lee's, and I think it was just because Lee's interview was serving as like a dual thing, and Perry's interview was purely just for her to talk about her anxiety.
Mm.
Anyway, that is kind of our thoughts on, you know, what we'd love for the girls to be asked in our dream interview, and an explanation of why we wanted to do this podcast. Definitely down below, if you guys have any that you wish the girls would answer, comment those down below as well. We'd love to hear what you guys think and what you've, you know, been dying for them to get asked, or maybe things that you have like submitted to radio stations or to like the Q&As the girls do that just like never get picked. But these were some of ours, and you know, like they're very career focused, which, you know, it'd be great if interviewers would actually ask them about their career, but they don't. And and I mean, sometimes it's fun for the girls to answer more silly things or play silly games, but like I would also really love it if they could get asked real questions about their career and artistic process and all of that, and we just don't get that, which is really unfortunate.
Yeah. Oh, also, even if you've, because I'm sure that there might be stuff from any of like my questions that I didn't hear that they might have answered in the past. If you remember them saying anything similar that could help answer, feel free to comment because I'm curious to know. Um, because I feel like some of my questions they must have said something similar, but I've yet to find it. So
Guys, try to give sources.
yes,
Like, don't just like spread whatever rumor the fandom has said. So like, if you remember seeing it in a video, try to like describe what video it was. Or if you are like saying like, well, I heard fans say this, just be clear that like it didn't, like you didn't hear it from the girl's mouth, you didn't watch them say it, and you heard it somewhere. Just be clear on your sources, guys.
yeah,
And that is kind of it for this episode. Thank you guys for coming around, hanging out with us. As always, comment section needs to be respectful of us and of other people in the comments. We want this to be a fun place for everyone to get to chat and talk about different things. And we will see you guys next week.